100 days for the big guy in the White House. Good morning, 6:05. Happy Tuesday. Glad you're here with us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We're streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. And this is a great headline I just saw on Fox News. Donald Trump's first 100 days in office, per a new study, has received 92% negative media coverage. Compare that to Joe Biden's first 100 days, where 59% of his media coverage was positive. So Trump, 8% positive, 92 negative. Biden, 59 positive, 41 negative. Go figure. I know you're shocked.
Talk about a bombshell.
I know you just cannot believe it. So as we sit here at the 100-day mark, the pace has been unbelievable. The pace in which the administration has moved has been unlike anything we have ever seen because, as history shows us, Trump's the second guy ever to win non-consecutive terms. So he comes in. There is no learning curve. There is no, getting back on the old bike analogy, so to speak, and learning how to ride it again. It is, we are hitting the ground running. And I wanted to start off the show giving you Trump's biggest win and giving you his biggest loss of his first 100 days in office. And the biggest win for this administration, hands down, has got to be the border and immigration. When you have seen border encounters drop 95 to 97% year over year from where they were under Joe Biden, it was not about Congress. Remember last year it was like, hey, Congress has to pass that bill. Yeah, they got to pass a bill, and that's how we're going to stop the border crisis. Joe said that. Kamala said it. They all said it. Our Republicans aren't serious about the border. They got to pass the big border bill. No. It turns out all we needed was a new president. That's it.
How about that?
I know. It's interesting how that works, isn't it? The border issue has been resolved in terms of, making sure anybody who is coming to the country is actually coming here through some type of legal manner. That's number one. And then part two of that, of course, is the deportations. Now, there are mixed numbers on this. I was looking at some of the data this morning. Tom Homan, who's the border czar, he said yesterday that the administration is on track to deport 139,000 people since Trump's inauguration. Now, ICE, which is required by Congress to publicly share detention and deportation information every 2 weeks, has reported removing about 57,000 people. So that's about half of what Tom Homan said. Maybe Homan's got some different numbers, but either way, you're talking about tens of thousands of people in the first 100 days who have been deported during Trump's administration.
Well, that's just the way the media is, so he inflates the numbers to go along with their propagations.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Well, it's like he said, on target, so it's one of those woulda, shoulda, coulda things that they like to do.
Yeah, he's just playing their game, I guess. That's what he's doing. So that has obviously been an enormous success. At the very least, they have stopped the bleeding. Now they have to figure out how to deport, frankly, millions of people. On the low end, Joe Biden allowed 10 million people into the country. On the high end, estimates are upwards of 20 million. It was unsustainable. It was calculated. It was planned for a reason. And Joe Biden utterly failed his nation and the American people every single day with his handling of the border crisis. It's indisputable at this point. So that has been the biggest win. It has also been the issue that Trump has pulled the best on here during his first 100 days in office, with today being day number 100. So that's been a huge win for him, and it's a much different sentiment than during his first term in office, when a lot of people turned on him quickly on the issue of immigration and then the issue of the border. That's not happening this time around. It's not. It's not happening because, first off, the fentanyl crisis, which was just obviously on steroids because of the border, resulted in us having more overdose deaths from drugs than at any point in modern American history. And a lot of that was not your traditional overdose. It was a fentanyl poisoning. And that was because of a wide open border. There are people from coast to coast, right here in Kansas City and around the country, who know people who have been killed by the fentanyl crisis. Heck, we are participating for a second straight year in the Cooper Davis Memorial 5K Run Walk coming up Saturday of Father's Day, June 14th, to raise money for that foundation after Cooper Davis, Mill Valley High School there in Shawnee, lost his life from a fentanyl poisoning. And there are stories like that all over Kansas City. This issue hit close to home, and frankly, the open border made things tremendously worse on that issue. So that is something that is relatable to everyday people. It wasn't just, hey, if you're in a border town in Texas, you were feeling the border. People all over the country were feeling the border crisis in different ways. So that has far and away been Donald Trump's biggest win. His biggest loss is not a policy thing. It's not like, it would be easy to say tariffs, but I don't know how the tariffs are going to work out. I don't. I mean, I know the fear-mongering out there. I know the media's angle, but gosh, I ain't taking them at their word. So the biggest loss has not been anything specifically that he's done, but it's more been the way the country continues to, I believe, devolve down the road of basically executive power. And it didn't start under Trump, just to be clear. Trump is just doing the same thing that Obama and Biden did during their time in office. He's just taking it to the next level. And by that, I mean the executive orders. Listen, I love the executive orders. You know that. I know that. We've talked about them the last 100 days. But we continue to become more and more of a country that neuters Congress. Congress is worthless. Let's be honest. What do? Okay, hopefully they'll pass a big, beautiful bill, but we are not really co-equal branches anymore when it comes to legislative, executive, and judicial. It is the executive branch basically fighting with the judicial branch, and the legislative branch, Congress, is kind of sitting there on the sidelines and waving and shaking hands and glad-handing and doing the whole thing. Here are the numbers. Trump has signed 139 executive orders in his first 100 days in office. To put that into perspective, Trump signed 220 executive orders during his first 4 years. His first term, he signed 220. He's currently in 100 days at 139. Obama signed 277 executive orders during his 8 years in office. George W. Bush, 291. Slick Willie signed 364. Reagan signed 380. Carter signed 320 in 4 years. That's a big number in 4 years. So, I mean, this has been going on for a long time. LBJ was over 300. But Trump's obviously on a historic pace with these executive orders. And while I cheer for them, and I admit I readily like basically all of them, I also wonder if when the shoe is on the other foot and we're driving the power of the executive branch as much as we are, and we've been going down this road for decades now, there will be a day that we say, man, there is way too much power in our executive branch. It didn't start under Trump. He's just continuing the theme. He has taken it to the next level, though. And you know and I know, Democrats, when they're back in power, they will take it to the next level and they will put it on steroids. And that is something that, listen, in the back of my mind, I do think about once in a while. It doesn't mean my enthusiasm is any less today. It doesn't mean I'm not on board with the orders. I am. I'm here for them. But we are heading down that road of, benevolent king type of status in country. There's no doubt about it. And Congress just has no backbone anymore. I mean, they are basically paid TV commentators on the public dime. That's it. They basically save Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC from having to hire more talking heads because they're basically subsidized talking heads by the taxpayer. That's it. 913-4087-957. Give me your big win. Give me the thing that you would consider a loss at this point. We'll talk about it throughout the morning on KCMO. And speaking of those executive orders, where are our truck driver friends at? I want to hear from you guys because this executive order yesterday on making sure truckers are speaking English got a lot of attention. And I want to know how big of a problem that is in that industry. 913-408-7957. We'll get you the details on that. And I do want to hear from those of you in the industry on the phones or the text line. 913-408-7957. The details of that executive order coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. Glad you're here on KCMO Talk Radio. The big win, the loss of the Trump first 100 days, it is today. My big win, if you missed it to start the show, was immigration, his handling of the border. My loss was not necessarily a policy item. It was just the continuing strength of the executive branch that, frankly, is a nationwide problem that predates Trump by decades. Mark and Gardner, before we get to the truckers. What's up, Mark? Good morning, buddy.
Good morning, Pete. I was listening to you, and I agree. The win is definitely the border, and I think his loss, going along the same lines that you were talking about, is that he hasn't used the bully pulpit to really give an address to a serious address to the nation and say, this is how it is, and call out Congress. I believe that is, and I don't know if he has it in him. I know he does, but I don't know if, I don't want to hear any more of this. You know, Ukraine wouldn't have started if I was in. I want a real serious address to the nation.
Well, Mark, thank you, buddy. He had that during the joint address to Congress, which was back in March, I guess it was, give or take. Feels like a million years ago. It's been moving so quickly. Early March. That was an hour and 45-minute speech. I don't know how many of those you need. It's not even May yet. But I would say if there is a communications issue, it would be on the tariff front, making sure that all the talking heads out of the administration are on the same page with that issue, because there's a lot of mixed messaging going on. And there is some news on that this morning as well we'll talk about on KCMO. So yesterday, Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, I will never again call her Caroline Sweeney after I randomly did that last week. Caroline Leavitt spoke about Trump's most recent executive order. And I admit I didn't realize how big of a problem this was in the industry. And I know many of you in the Kansas City area are in the trucking industry, so I want to hear from you after this announcement from Caroline Leavitt on Trump's latest executive order that he signed yesterday.
And then the third executive order, which actually speaks to the heart of your question earlier about the Uber drivers, will be a order directing the Department of Transportation to include English literacy tests for our truckers. This is a big problem in the trucking community that, unless you're in that community, you might not know. But there's a lot of communication problems between truckers on the road with federal officials and local officials as well, which obviously is a public safety risk. So we're going to ensure that our truckers, who are the backbone of our economy, are all able to speak English. That's a very common sense policy in the United States of America. So the president will be signing that later this afternoon.
Caroline Leavitt yesterday. So the order directs Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy to rescind guidance that watered down the law requiring English proficiency for commercial drivers, and to carry out additional administrative, regulatory, or enforcement actions to improve the working conditions of America's truck drivers. The White House officially sharing in a statement, the president believes that English is a non-negotiable safety requirement for professional drivers, as they should be able to read and understand traffic signs. I mean, obviously, yeah, I'm with you there. I just didn't know that we were in a world right now where I'm driving next to an 18-wheeler, and I don't know if the guy speaking it can speak English and read the road signs. My brother-in-law got married in Puerto Rico last month, and we almost missed our flight because I couldn't read the damn road signs as we got near the airport. And it was driving me nuts. And I, for the first time ever, dropped a word I should never have dropped in front of the kids in the car. But you know what? I don't think they really picked up on it. But,
Italian. You were just speaking Italian.
I wish. I speak English and English. That's about all I've got in me. It's been about 20 years since I took a Spanish class, so I am way out of touch. But I can't imagine this being your job and you don't know what the road signs say. Tony is in Marshall. What's up, Tony? You're on KCMO.
Yeah, good morning, Pete. How you doing? I've been 45 years in the transportation business, and I have ran across everything out there on the road. but a lot of these drivers are using a translation app on their phones to communicate with. But I've been to plants where they've rejected trucks from coming into the facilities because the drivers didn't have driver's license, and they weren't citizens of the United States, or they couldn't communicate with them. And I've even ran into situations where there'll be a driver with a hand-drawn map, and he's trying to communicate with somebody to ask which way to go on a hand-drawn map that the person that he drives for had give him before he started his trip.
What? So this has gotten much worse the last few years, would you say?
I would say it's gotten worse in the last 5-6 years. I've actually ran into a situation down in Florida where a whole family was living in a truck, and the only person that could communicate in English was a small boy, probably about 8-9 years old, and he translated for the family, and they were trying to figure out how to get to where they were going. Couldn't read a map, didn't have GPS, had no clue what they were doing. And we're having a lot of wrecks out there, and people are getting hurt or killed because drivers can't read road signs. They'll stop in the middle of the interstate because they thought they missed their exit, and they'll back up in the middle of the interstate.
Jeez.
It's gotten horrible out there.
Well, this is hopefully a step in the right direction, Tony. Thank you.
All right, you have a great day.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks so much. Wow. I mean, that's putting the rest of us at risk as well. Mitchell in Kansas City, go ahead. You're on KCMO.
Hi, Pete. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, brother. What's happening?
Oh, not much. Yeah, in regards to the last guy, he said, they don't know how to read or speak English, and they can't read the road signs. And then also, you go into the fuel line at the truck stops, and then they spend, 30 minutes to an hour getting fuel because they don't know how to push the buttons on the fuel pump. And then they also take their 30-minute mandatory break there, and then it causes the other truckers like me to get behind on our schedule, and then people end up getting in arguments and fights at the truck stops, and it makes it unsafe.
Man, that's not good. So it's like they don't have the etiquette down either?
Right. And then it's also they wear, like, shorts and flip-flops, and, like, they don't wear the right attire. They're not very professional. They don't smell very good. They're just, I'm not trying to sound prejudiced or anything, but that's just how it is. And
how are they, do you know, how are they getting hired?
So I don't know the exact reason why, but, like, you have guys like me that live in America that have our CDL endorsements, but they come from overseas, and there's, like, some sort of other form of CDL that they can get where they don't have to road test or anything like that, I think.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a work visa, I guess. Yeah. And then they take our freight, and then they send their money back overseas to their families, and they live on pennies here in America, which is why the hygiene issue for me is a problem.
Yeah. All right. Well, keep that deodorant on this morning, Mitchell. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
See you, buddy. 913-408-7957. News coming up in a minute. We'll get to more of your calls. And plus, speaking of overseas, the latest on the north of the border next. Guy Benson coming to Kansas City. I had somebody text me yesterday from kind of outside the Kansas City region, and they said, hey, I just saw your event. I'm like, yeah, we've been promoting it for 3 weeks, and the majority of tickets are sold. So you got to get on it. KCMOTalkRadio.com. Guy Benson will be here for a private event, a meet and greet, a show. I'll be with him. Keatsman will be with him. And that is Thursday, June 12th at Boulevard Brewing in their suites. Dinner, drinks, pictures, meet and greet, the whole deal. So get your tickets now at KCMOTalkRadio.com. And if you want to buy a table, those are discounted for a table of 10. So those are still available. But the show's in about, 5-6 weeks, and the tickets are going fast. KCMOTalkRadio.com is where you can get those. So Trump's executive order yesterday basically saying truck drivers have got to be able to speak English. They have got to be able to read signs. It was something I didn't know was a problem. I just could not fathom Like, as someone who was driving through the streets of Puerto Rico when my brother-in-law got married to a Puerto Rican girl last month, I could not fathom doing that for a living and having no idea where I was going. Now, you've got your GPS, but in the end, you got to have some instincts. You got to be able to read the signs. I learned that the hard way. We almost missed our flight coming back because I didn't know where I was going and couldn't read the damn signs. So you have professional truck drivers on our roads who are apparently struggling with this. And I mean, you want to talk about executive orders that we should all be able to get behind. What would be the argument against this? Like, how much Trump derangement syndrome would you have to not want your truck drivers on the roads next to you right now on 435 and 35 and all the roads around Kansas City? Why would you not want that 18-wheeler next to you to make sure that it has somebody who is speaking English behind the wheel? I don't get it. You have got to have next-level TDS to not be a fan of this. Brian in Kansas City, you're on KCMO. Hey, Brian.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, it's pretty messed up out here. If I was in a car with a family driving down the highway, I'd definitely steer clear of the semis because you don't know about the drivers behind the wheel of it. I just wanted to something I witnessed personally. Our court systems are letting us down and letting these people drive. I was in the Olathe court for a DOT violation, and there was a Mexican guy in there, and he had been pulled over 7 different times by DOT. And when he walked out of there, he still got into a semi and was driving down the road.
Is that right?
That's 100% fact. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes.
Now, he was a citizen or he was not a citizen, or do you not know?
No, he had to have a translator. He couldn't even speak English. It was pretty messed up.
Wow.
The major corporations are the ones hiring all the people that don't know what the road signs are, and there's no camaraderie with all these, because nobody's got anybody's back. It's just not a very fun job anymore. It's really not.
How long you been doing it?
22 years.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, I'm glad I brought this up, and I'm glad that you checked in with this, Brian. And now I will be keeping even more of a distance from 18-wheelers. That's sad to say, but it's like, man, and then the last guy is saying they're driving around in flip-flops. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, the outfits. You think Walmart people are fun to look at. Stop by a truck stop and look at the truckers sometimes.
Oh, thank you, Brian. If I don't laugh, I'm going to cry, buddy. I appreciate it.
10-4, fight, fight, fight.
There you go. Brian, in the early running for caller of the day. I mean, we've had a lot of great callers already at 6:38. It's going to be a tough one. 9:30, we announce our caller of the day every single day here on KCMO Talk Radio. Jonathan in Kansas City, go ahead.
Hey, Pete. 2 points. First, you keep hearing stories like people hitting these trucks hitting the Independence Avenue Bridge. I wonder if that's some of it with maybe not all these drivers, but some of them. That's my first point. My second point is about 20 years ago, it was 2006, so it would have been when George W. Bush was president. My cousin, 19 years old, was killed in a collision. Her brother was driving the car. They were coming home from college, and they hit a fruit truck. And I guess apparently this was 20 years ago. What happened was, I guess there were illegals driving that truck. This happened in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And so that after the accident happened, they obviously, under George W. Bush, he was fairly hard on the border, so they knew they could have been deported. So after the accident, they scattered the scene and fled the scene of the accident. My cousin died instantly. She was 19 years old.
Oh,
and obviously it had a huge effect on our family. But a lot of these problems, it's not just people think, oh, it's only the last few years that it's been bad. I mean, I think a lot of this stuff goes back to the 90s and 2000s yes. with just the problem of companies hiring illegals. And I would imagine they're doing it to save money. But see, this is what happens is literally I lost a dear family member because of this. And I'm sure she's not the only case out there.
I doubt it. Thanks for sharing, Jonathan. I hate to hear it, but I appreciate the call.
It's also one of the quickest ways to go into business for yourself when you get here. If you can get the money together to get a truck, then you're working for yourself at that point.
Yeah, no, you're right. Now, obviously what you had under the Clinton years and Bush years on the border was mostly single Mexican men coming to work, send money back to the family, the whole deal. It's a completely different beast now, or it was under Joe Biden at the border, which created a whole nother set of issues. But I am just hearing your calls over the last 10, 15 minutes so blown away by this issue. We know that obviously there are many people in this country who are working and trying to make an honest living and may not be here legally, but they're doing it the right way. And it's on the companies to obviously make sure they're hiring people who have some form of legal status who are allowed to work. But I never would have imagined that happening in the trucking business, of all places. Meantime, we've got 7 million able-bodied men between the ages of 25 and 54 who are not in the labor force. And it's like we have such a crisis in this country. I'm not giving the companies an out here, but think about that. We have 7 million able-bodied men in America who are not in the labor force, and that is part of the problem as well.
Yeah, and some of the issues, too, right here in Kansas City, down I-49, where Richards Bauer is now an international trucking center. And so some of the concerns initially were for the condition of the equipment coming in from Mexico when you don't have the same safety inspections on brakes, et cetera. That was an initial concern, but it certainly encompasses what we're talking about today as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one angle of it, which is obviously problematic. I never thought we'd be like, hey, I hope the guy driving the 18-wheeler next to me can read the sign for Antioch and State Line Road. Yeah. I mean, geez. Oh, Lee Summit. Let's take a detour down that way on 470. It's like, whoa, no, I got to go 435 north. Hey, you don't want to be doing that. Man. That is nuts. Absolutely nuts. And it's one of the many things that to tie over the first 45 minutes of the show we talked about. I am such a fan of these executive orders that the president obviously is pushing forward. But if there's a concern over the first 100 days, it's the fact that Congress is worthless. Congress is absolutely worthless. And maybe it's because these guys and gals have to run every 2 years. I mean, they feel like they literally are in nonstop, and they are in nonstop fundraising, campaign mode. And I get why the system is set up the way it is. But, man, the fact that so much of the stuff that Trump is doing can't even be accomplished, or no one can think about accomplishing any of this through Congress. It's like, what's the point of these guys and gals? Just save us all the money. Let's just go for the benevolent king deal, elect one every 4 years, and, have a judicial branch to handle it. I'm being obviously tongue-in-cheek when I say that, but it's kind of where we're at right now. You can't even fathom Congress actually doing the work to, pass these kinds of bills that the American people, I think, would easily get behind. Hey, let's make sure our truckers can speak English. Okay, yeah, I mean, that probably makes sense. Let's make sure they can read the road signs. Yep, sure, left and right. I mean, it seems pretty easy to me. It's wild. I don't usually like to look back, but I'm going to spend a couple of minutes doing it here because of a piece I saw in the Kansas Reflector yesterday. Today is day 100 for the President of the United States. We will have much more on that coming up throughout the morning here on KCMO. And tomorrow night, just confirmed this yesterday, we will air a President Trump 100-day town hall from News Nation that will feature our good buddy Bill O'Reilly, Fredo Chris Cuomo, and Stephen A. Smith. So that will air tomorrow night at 8 p.m. after Mark Levin, and then we'll have on Bill O'Reilly Thursday morning at 8:30 to react to that event that he is going to help co-moderate, and he'll be here Thursday morning, 8:30 on KCMO. Later this hour, we've got the Kansas 38 special tickets. That's at 7:45, so hang on for that, less than 40 minutes away. Lee Norman. You remember that name? He's not quite Rex Archer, the former Kansas City, Missouri health director.
Thanksgiving.
Oh!
Boy, I love Thanksgiving.
The best thing that Lee Norman had going for him is that Rex Archer was his counterpart on the other side of state line. So Lee Norman and Rex Archer kind of looked similar, but Lee Norman was the Kansas health secretary during COVID. And he did a sit-down interview with the Kansas Reflector, which makes the Kansas City Star look like a far-right publication on some days. And they sat down with Lee Norman to reflect on the last few years and look back on COVID, since it's been, of course, 5 years since COVID was obviously impacting us. We were in the stay-at-home orders and all that nonsense, right? So Lee Norman, it starts off the article saying this. 5 years ago, Lee Norman was trying to dissuade Kansans from ingesting chemical cleaners to prevent COVID-19. That's how they start this piece of garbage piece. Preparing for the end of a statewide stay-at-home order and deciding whether to send tests for everyone in long-term care facilities and prisons. Now, just to point out how bizarre that opening sentence is from the Kansas Reflector, even Snopes, which is not a sympathetic fact-checking website to anybody who is moderate or to the right, even if you go to Snopes, they say, quote, Trump did not advise people to inject bleach to treat COVID-19. So right out of the gates, you know where the Kansas Reflector is going with this hot garbage, but it's kind of on brand for what they do. Within 2 years of the first cases of COVID in Kansas, Norman stepped down from his cabinet position at the request of Governor Laura Kelly. He goes on to note here, the first 4 weeks went swimmingly well, but he said quickly things became contentious. As executive action from the governor, public health recommendations, and attempts at understanding a brand new virus unfolded. He admitted public health was slow to address the social and psychological impacts of the pandemic. But by the point he and other public health officials realized that, he said, resistance to following public health guidance had already begun to take shape. No. You do not get to rewrite history like that, big fella. Not here. Maybe with the Reflector, but not here.
He's a troubled guy.
No way. We're not going to stand for that. The problem is the powers that be, from Fauci to bowling ball Archer to Lee Norman in Kansas, the problem for all of them was they doubled down in the moment. Instead of admitting, hey, we kind of screwed this up. And we do need to acknowledge the psychological and the social impacts, especially on our children, who were basically at, statistically speaking, the healthy ones, a 0% risk from COVID-19. We have got to make sure that we are not destroying a generation over this. Let's protect grandma. Let's do all those things. But we're not going to ruin a generation of kids because of this virus. The data makes it very clear we can't do that. And the Faucis, the Archers, and the Lee Normans of the world, they didn't jump on board when they knew after a few weeks that, this is not sustainable. And that the groups who are getting impacted the most were, oftentimes poor kids who did not have stable home lives, who were suddenly sent home with maybe a single parent working 2 jobs, and they didn't have the technology to get on laptops and iPads and things like that, and they had no one checking on them. So this whole idea of, we were looking at ways to figure out how to incorporate the social and psychological impacts, but by then everybody had started resisting us. Yeah, but then you guys doubled down on your crappy ideas. You didn't say, hey, we got to do an about face and we got to do it real fast. You didn't do it. That's on you. They dug their heels in and they said, all right, well, you better listen to us. Science is settled. It's like, no, science is never settled. That's the whole point of science. It's always evolving. And you guys didn't evolve with the data. And now there is a political ramification of this. And I saw this yesterday as well. It ties into the Lee Norman story. Young people and how they have changed politically is fascinating. There's new data out. Yale, Ivy League school, did a youth poll, and it broke the internet in the last couple of days when it comes to a partisan split within Gen Z. That's our youngest generation. That's the post-millennial generation. So these are young people who were born really mid to late 90s all the way up through, early 2010s. Here's the breakdown. Given a generic Democrat versus Republican ballot for 2026, respondents aged 18 to 21 supported Republicans by nearly 12 points, while those aged 22 to 29 backed Democrats by about 6 points. As Yale notes here, it was a stunning gap that undermined the long-standing notion of younger voters always trending more liberal. On the contrary, today's youngest eligible voters are more conservative than their older counterparts. According to the poll, they are less likely to support transgender athletes participating in sports, less likely to support sending aid to Ukraine, and more likely to approve of President Donald Trump. 51% of younger Gen Zers view Trump favorably, compared to 46% of older Gen Z. So liberals may have a reckoning over COVID, because these were young people who got impacted the most by the policies of people like Lee Norman, the former Kansas health director. And now he's joining the Kansas Reflector. They're, of course, running cover for him. They're trying to rewrite history on how he helped navigate COVID here in the state of Kansas. And frankly, it's not true. He's not being honest. Now, that's nothing new if you follow the Kansas Reflector, but you see the political ramifications of this going forward, and it's fascinating. And when you break it down by gender in this Yale poll for 18 to 21-year-olds, not only are men overwhelmingly to the right, R plus 19, even 18 to 21-year-old women, R plus 4. Yeah, it's a 15-point difference, but you're not going to find a demographic on the female side right now that is an R plus 4 when it comes to age range. You could break it down from there and include different subsets within various age brackets and probably find an R plus something. But when it comes to an age bracket, R plus 4 for 18 to 21-year-old young women, that is fascinating. And I think the COVID and the handling of COVID is what actually may have created this super conservative young generation. And this is not what they intended to do, right? They actually intended for the opposite to happen. They intended to create a generation that just loved government and worshiped government and said, government, save me from viruses, give me money, give me more checks, I'll take the stimmies, let's line them up, baby, let's go. And it looks like it's had the complete opposite effect on these young people. And they didn't see it coming. And I'm here for it, man. 7:14, happy Tuesday. Glad you're here on KCMO. Tirade Tuesday is coming up at 8:30 this morning. We've got the Kansas 38 special tickets coming up at 7:45. That show is at Azura Amphitheater in late September. Next, somebody was at the White House yesterday, and some old social media posts may prove that they have been red-pilled. And it's not somebody you want to root for, but hey, you give them credit where it's due. We'll tell you who next on KCMO. Nice job there by Big Bad Bill. He will be on the show Thursday morning, 8:30, after his town hall with President Trump. That airs tomorrow night, 8 p.m., right here on KCMO with Chris Cuomo, Stephen A. Smith, presented by News Nation. That will run tomorrow at 8 after the Mark Levin show. And then Bill will join us for the reaction right here exclusively on KCMO Thursday at 8:30. So I know that we're not looking to give the Eagles any credit for beating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, but I will give somebody credit where it's deserved. Saquon Barkley, star running back for the Eagles, got a lot of gruff over the last couple of days for hanging out with Trump, playing golf, flying an Air Force One, the whole deal. Well, an old tweet from Saquon Barkley has surfaced from June 3rd of 2020. Post George Floyd, country's going nuts, Trump's final months of term number 1. Saquon Barkley posted on June 3rd of 2020, quote, "The protests," meaning the George Floyd protests, "are amazing and inspiring. But please, in 2 to 3 weeks, when the protests are no longer happening, remember, we still need change. We need to come together as a community, and we need action. Racism and injustice cannot exist," says Saquon Barkley. June of 2020. Yesterday, Saquon had a message for the haters who were upset that he was hobnobbing and golfing and hanging out with Trump. He says, quote, LOL, some people are really upset because I played golf and flew to the White House with the president. Maybe I just respect the office. Not a hard concept to understand. Just golfed with Obama not too long ago and look forward to finishing my round with Trump. Now you get out of my mentions with all this politics and have an amazing day. That dude has been red-pilled right there. That's what has happened to Saquon Barkley, and that is what has happened to millions of Americans, including many celebrities over the last 5 years. They bought the nonsense, hook, line, and sinker from 2020. They realized it was one big grift. Black Lives Matter as a organization was one massive grift. Bought themselves homes, did absolutely nothing for the movement they said that they were funding, and it all was based on a lie anyway. And if that is not a great example of a prominent athlete being red-pilled in real time, I don't know what is. And if you missed it yesterday, Trump had this to say about Saquon Barkley. The Eagles were at the White House to, of course, celebrate their Super Bowl win over the Chiefs. And if we can't get Mahomes and Kelsey and Taylor Swift and Chris Jones and the boys there with Trump in the White House, and knock on wood, I think they'll get there at some point the next 3 years. This is a pretty funny moment.
A great coach inspiring you, and you got the ball to your superstar running back who I met yesterday, and I want to tell you he's a handsome guy, but I wouldn't want to tackle him. Saquon Barkley. Where's Saquon?
Where are you, Saquon? Where is he? He's standing right over his shoulder. Ah, there he is. There's Saquon.
He's good. I got to know him a little bit. I offered him a ride on Air Force One because I was coming down. And usually they say, no, I don't think so. He said, I'll take it, sir. And he loved it. We love being together. He's a great young guy.
Good for Saquon. I'll take the ride. Why would you turn that down? Air Force One? How many times is that going to be on the table for you? That's a no-brainer. I love that. So, good moment there. Where's Saquon? Where is he? Where's Kalina? Kalina Bruce. Longtime listeners will get that reference from the 2022 election cycle when this, I don't even know what Kalina Bruce was running for.
She was running against Alford in the primary.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she ran against Mark Alford in the primary a few years back. And she had this Trump drop in her commercial that aired on KCMO. And it was Trump saying, where's Kalina? Where is she? Where's Saquon? Where is he? Oh, man. Now, on the football front, that awful interview that Bill Belichick did on CBS Sunday Morning that was beyond awkward because his 24-year-old girlfriend, 49 years his junior, was interrupting it. Well, apparently it was even worse than what we saw. And if you haven't seen the clip or heard the clip, here's a quick snippet, and then I'll give you the update from TMZ.
Jordan was a constant presence during our interview.
You have Jordan right over there. Everybody in the world seems to be following this relationship. They've got an opinion about your private life. It's got nothing to do with them, but they're invested in it. How do you deal with that?
Never been too worried about what everybody else thinks. Just try to do what I feel like is best for me and what's right.
How did you guys meet?
Not talking about this.
No?
No.
It's a topic neither one of them is comfortable commenting on.
It got even weirder from there. TMZ reporting yesterday afternoon that interview was even more awkward and worse than what aired. TMZ reports, we're told outside of that baffling moment that made the final edit, there were numerous other instances of Jordan Hudson butting in, even when the legendary coach was answering questions about football. She would stop and correct him. Okay. That's as embarrassing as it gets. Other sources are saying to TMZ that Belichick only arrived at the interview with Hudson, no one from his publishing company, the University of North Carolina, or any other rep that was with him, which was a bit of a head-scratcher to CBS producers on the set. At one point in the Q&A, Hudson got so heated, she stood up and walked out and wanted Belichick to follow. It's unclear if the coach agreed, but the blow-up delayed the whole interview for about a half an hour. This has the potential to literally ruin Bill Belichick's reputation. And it's only going to be possible if he allows it to happen. Bill, I don't know. And the only way, only a crazy 24-year-old girlfriend could ruin the reputation of a guy who has won 6 Super Bowls. Don't let it happen, Bill. Save yourself now. You looked like somebody who was being held hostage in that interview anyway, and I promise you, it's not worth it.